Hello and welcome to this video where I show you how to configure ExpressRoute with DE-CIX DirectCLOUD services. I'm Wolfgang Tremmel and I usually run the DE-CIX Academy. So in the first video, I showed you how to order ExpressRoute and how to order DirectCLOUD services to Azure using the DE-CIX portal and the Azure portal. In this second video, we are now configuring your router and the Microsoft side to set up BGP peering between your router and Azure. So let's head over to the Azure portal. We're starting here on this ExpressRoute circuit we ordered the last time. Well, it's provisioned, it's up and running. And what we are now doing is we are setting up the interfaces and we are setting up BGP. So we start on the Microsoft side over here. And since we want to configure a peering using private IP addresses, we are starting here with Azure Private. So let's click on Azure Private and let's fill out this form. My AS number is 196610. You do not have to have an official AS number. You can use a private AS for the private peering, but since I do have an official AS, I am using it. And since it's 2021, we are doing both IPv4 and IPv6. IPv6 has been enabled only recently, and it's considered to be in a beta stage at Microsoft, but it's working, and so we are configuring it. So the IP addresses we are needing here for IPv4, that's a /30. So we need basically two IP addresses, one for the Microsoft router, one for your router or for my router. And we need that both for the primary and for the secondary connection. So I'm adding two /30s IPv4 addresses, and you might see that I'm using private IP addresses for that. The same goes for IPv6. I'm also using what IPv6 calls unique local addresses, which also are private IP addresses here. And I'm using a /126, which is actually the same size as the corresponding IPv4 address. So two /126s for IPv6 and two /30s for IPv4 are needed, and you can very well use private IP addresses here. The VLAN ID, that's the so-called inner VLAN here, this number 11, and I need to configure the same VLAN ID on the Microsoft side and on the router side. The outer VLAN ID I'm configuring later. This is something you need to talk to your ISP or to DE-CIX, because that distinguishes between the primary and the secondary connection. The inner VLAN ID, T11, basically selects this private peering here. So that's all. I'm not adding a password. I click Save, and the next step will be to configure my router. So let's head over to the router. And let's configure the interfaces first. I need two interfaces, one for the primary, one for the secondary connection. Let me first simply cut and paste here the configuration, and then let me show you what I have configured. So this is the configuration I need. I have two sub-interfaces here on my Cisco router, .36 and .37, and that's the VLAN ID, the outer VLAN ID, and this 11 here, that's the inner VLAN ID I just configured on the Microsoft side as well. And here we have the same IP addresses. The network, the .1 is my side, so the lower IP addresses is my side. The higher IP address of the transit networks is always the Microsoft side, and I'm committing that now. And the first thing, of course, what you try, if you put in a new interface, you can check if you can ping the other side. So the .2, as I said, is the Microsoft side, and I'm pinging that. Success. So it works. It has been set up, and well, it pings. So this is part 1. Part 2, of course, you need to set up a BGP. For me, I'm using a tool for that. It's called Peering Manager. I don't want to talk too much about that in this video. I have made separate videos about Peering Manager, how you can learn how it works. Of course, you can also configure BGP manually. So I'm heading over here to Peering Manager, to the autonomous systems, and I check that's 12076. I have already prepared this. That's the AS Microsoft uses for Azure. I click on direct peering session, and what I do is I simply enabled the pre-configured session. So I already prepared that, of course. So, and then I'm deploying that to the router. So that's my router. I click on configuration, and now the config is being built in the background. This is the complete configuration, and if I click on deploy, the router compares this configuration to the one on the router and just shows me the differences. So this is what is being configured on my router now, and if you scroll down, I don't want, well, you can have a look at everything, of course, but the interesting part here is these neighbor statements where BGP is configured here for IPv4 and here for IPv6. So I'm committing the changes now, which makes them active on the router. And then let's have a look at the BGP sessions. So configuration successful. And let's have a look here at my BGP sessions to Microsoft Azure, and that's the IPv4 session, and they are both up already. Of course, they're not up yet, but now they're up. But no prefixes are announced yet. And for IPv6, it looks similar. They are both up. And let's have a look what we are announcing to Microsoft. And after that, we are heading over to the Microsoft portal. And oops. And let's have a look what they're receiving. So we are announcing one prefix. This is the prefix we are announcing to Microsoft. And now let's have a look at the Microsoft portal. So here we go, Azure Private. 2 subnets are enabled, IPv4 and IPv6. Click on these 3 dots. Unfortunately, you can only look at the IPv4 prefixes here. So that's a part still missing on the Azure portal. But when I click on View Route Table, you should see the same prefix like you've seen before, the one I'm announcing towards Microsoft. So here we go. Oh, that didn't work yesterday. Fantastic. Now I also see IPv6. Great. So these are the 2 prefixes my router here on the left-hand side is announcing towards the Azure cloud. So we have now established BGP between my on-premises router and the Azure router. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to connect this part here, this grayed out part, to your setup so you can work between your database on your on-premises server together with a database within the Azure cloud. Thanks for listening. I'm Wolfgang Dremmel and I run the DE-CIX Academy. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.